restart our ITRE meeting, and we are now at item 12 on our agenda, which is the exchange of views with the Commission on geothermal energy. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. KOLINSKY, Head of Unit for Renewables and Energy System Integration Policy, for being with us today to present the current state of play of the geothermal energy sector and its future perspectives, as the geothermal could be even more important source of energy to reach our climate goals, Fit for 55 objectives, Green Deal objectives, source for electricity, but also for heating in many countries, including my country, Romania, capital Bucharest, but in many other places, and a source of energy which is still not used at its full potential. But this is something that will be presented. The debate will contribute also to the preparatory work towards drafting the ITRE own initiative report on geothermal energy. We have this report decided. We have one of the prominent members of ITRE committee, the first vice president and coordinator of ECR, Professor Krasnodevsky, as rapporteur, and the discussion today could be extremely useful also in preparing a good report. We have also the shadows here, I see Mrs. Weiss and other colleagues. So we are looking forward for the presentation and then, of course, to the discussion, looking also ahead on the own initiative report of the ITRE committee. By saying that, I kindly invite Mr. Lukasz Koliński for 10 minutes to have the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for the invitation. Indeed, we think that the geothermal energy is one important source of renewable energy in the European Union. However, it is the source for which, as you said, the potential is still not fully clear. We already use it in the European Union for heating purposes in quite a few member states, but also for production of electricity. What I would do is I would focus in this presentation on our policy framework that addresses issues related to geothermal, and I will start with the potential of heating and cooling in our energy system, because this is where most of the potential of geothermal is. So, as you see, heating and cooling, in particular heating, is the biggest part of the energy consumption in Europe. That's almost half of all the energy use. The most of it, around 70%, is today based on fossil. And why do we focus on it so much? Because we see that so far the progress in terms of penetration of renewables in this sector has been rather modest, but we see very high cost-effective potential in this sector, 40 to 45% share. And so far we have seen just a bit over 20% of renewables in this sector. And this is obviously the sector with a lot of direct benefits for citizens. So far, the renewables in this sector have been based mostly on biomass. We would like to push other renewable technologies in there. Next slide, please. So, what does the regulatory framework for this sector and for renewables in general look like? I mean, obviously our main tool is the Renewable Energy Directive, the one adopted in 2018, the one in force, the one that should have been transposed already, and then the Renewable Energy Directive revision in 2023. This framework created a very strong push for the sector, for the heating and cooling sector. We have increased the overall ambition for the renewables, but also we increased the ambition in heating and cooling sector. So for heating, already in 2018, we introduced a separate section with targets and with measures, and then we reinforced this framework in 2023. This is technology neutral in between different heating technologies, but it's much more comprehensive than than our previous legislation. It goes into different measures. It goes into incentives for skills development, etc. We have specific provisions related to renewables in district heating and cooling, which is particularly important for geothermal. There are synergies to be achieved there. And finally, we have introduced provisions related to permitting, including permitting for large heat pumps, which are also very relevant for geothermal. The final point on this, we have currently received draft national energy and climate plans from some member states. We will use the assessment of these plans in order to make sure that that our legislation is well implemented. What I can say at this stage, we don't have yet all the drafts, but we see already in some member states quite promising developments for geothermal. The final point on the legislation for RED is implementation is key right now, and we will work with the member states in order to ensure the transposition and the full implementation also in the heating sector. Next, please. There are other legislative elements which are relevant for geothermal. Energy Efficiency Directive, which spells out a pathway to decarbonize our 17,000 district heating systems, and this to quite some extent could be done with geothermal energy, which will be an essential contributor to it. Then another element in the Energy Efficiency Directive is the requirement on local energy planning, which will require structured approach to local energy systems, to mapping, including district heating potential, and that again will help geothermal. NZIA, so Net Zero Industry Act, covers geothermal as one of the technologies, and this provides opportunities for access to finance, access to technologies, access to markets as well. That obviously has been proposed by the Commission, but is still in the negotiations between the co-legislators. And finally, I would mention the upcoming Heat Pump Action Plan, which focuses on heat pumps and obviously to a large extent the small-scale heat pumps, but it also covers large geothermal heat pumps for example, district heating or for industry. And this action plan will come up, the Commission will come up with this action plan in the coming months, and it will include quite a few actions which would support geothermal. Next, please. A few words on financing. We have projects which support the developments in geothermal under our research program, under Horizon, both Horizon 2020 in the past, but also Horizon Europe. Just to mention a few, we had a project related to geothermal emissions control, which focus on the reduction of CO2 emissions from geothermal power plants by reinjection and mineral sequestration. We have projects related to using geothermal for retrofitting of historical buildings. We have projects related to improving efficiency and integration of underground heat storage systems. We also have projects related to raw materials from geothermal fluids, or another project supported by Innovation Fund related to the first commercial scale implementation of an innovative closed loop geothermal technology. But there are other financing sources. There is the LIFE program, under which there are several geothermal projects financed. There is the Just Transition Fund, and there is the cohesion policy as well. Obviously, some member states included investments in support of large-scale heat pumps that could work with geothermal also under several recovery and resilience plans. Next, please. That I already covered. Next. Now, as regards the areas for further work, the first area that we see is related to data availability. So coming back to this unused potential for geothermal, it all starts with the fact that there is no comprehensive mapping of the subsurface data, the heat resources, the geological data, everything that could help to plan investments in geothermal. We see the issues of availability of data. Some of it is in the private hands. It's not public. We have some projects which help to get this data from the public sources, but again, it is pretty fragmented, and that is something that our colleagues from the Joint Research Center are further working on. The other big area of work is de-risking of geothermal investments. We see that the member states are starting to put some national schemes in support of geothermal in order to de-risk it. Quite a lot of issues relate to the fact that geothermal projects are often very tailored to a particular area, and they are one-offs, and it's difficult to achieve effects of scale. We started discussions with the European Investment Bank on dedicated instruments for district heating and cooling, and this is an area where some support for geothermal could also be foreseen. Thank you very much. I stop here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for looking to the situation first and to the most important and relevant pieces of legislation. Some of them we just finished, endorsed by the European Parliament, like Renewable Energy Directive, and not only, of course, we are working on ENSIA and critical raw materials. They are in different phases. Last week we voted in Strasbourg, and let's see the discussions with the Council. We are looking forward to the heat pump action plan. Also, the financing is very important from different EU instruments, but also to the national ones. Not all the countries used all these opportunities, unfortunately. Maybe they concentrated on other priorities, but it's good that European Commission remind them that they could use the RRF or the cohesion funds in order to support also these projects. And also to looking to the future challenges, and this is something that I'm sure will be also seen in the position of European Parliament. By saying that, I will open the floor for members of ITRE committee, and I will start, of course, with our rapporteur, Professor Krasnodebski.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for this presentation.
Microphone, please, for the speaker. Microphone.
Okay. Yeah, this is okay. Thank you very much for presentation by the Commission. I think that the main issue were clearly identified, but maybe I start with general remarks that we have and you mentioned this at the beginning, that we have a huge discrepancy between potential of geothermal energy, and everybody is agree, and from expert commission to the industry, and also I don't know the NGOs, and on the other hand the current situation. There is no common European strategy on geothermal, and there is as we know, industry view that geothermal is somewhat somehow neglected at the European level. So there is a need, I think, it's right that as in many our legislation, the geothermal is mentioned, that there are possibilities of finance or support it, but we need to make a synthesis to prepare geothermal strategy, to mirror approach, Commission approach on solar and wind, yeah, because the questions, and one first question, my question to the Commission would be, why actually we are so late, and why there is no such a strategy what are the reasons for it. Then the next problem, and I think that the most important challenge is what was mentioned also in this presentation, the lack of sufficient geothermal resource mapping. Yeah, then once again, this is the questions if there is a possibility to creating some kind of European or national atlases of geothermal, European, and how can we actually make this this information, which it's basis for further developing of geothermal energy and using of this energy in European level. The next point is the just transition mechanism. This also was mentioned here, that it is possible to finance from just transition fund, but I think it is important to stress the enormous potential of geothermal project for territories in energy transition. And we have already now several successful examples when decommissioned coal mines were transformed into geothermal district heating project, providing heating and employment to the communities. And I think generally in this region there is a great interest for geothermal project, and we have to support this and to make this also visible, but also to promote this as an important aspect of this transitional mechanism, restriction of this territories in energy transition. The next problem, which is important, is the questions of permitting procedure, and also I think, and this once again shows us that there is a need for European strategy, the questions of the profound differences in classification, categories. Yeah, for instance, classification what is shallow and deep geothermal is very different in different countries and so on. And there's the questions for the Commission. Could we also see, because sometimes it's concerning also the legal problems with the mining law, is there any possibility to at least to encourage, to harmonize regulation in this respect, and also to propose the common classification? And the last sentence, also the questions of the research and development and investment, because we have many signals from industry, but also from the national governments, that if we not invest in the new technologies in this respect, that maybe in the future we'll be so dependent on technologies from outside Europe as we are, for instance, in solar. And in the end, I just wanted to inform you that on the 10th October we would like to, with European Geothermal Energy Council, there is organizing, this council is organizing an event with participation of MEP, and everybody is of course invited, and also Commission is invited to this event, and this discussion also with the stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor. I go now to the shadows, but please respect the 2 minutes if possible. And on behalf of EPP, Mrs. Weiss, Pernilla Weiss.
I'll be speaking Danish. Whilst you're putting on your headphones, I think I can stick to the time, because Professor Krasnodębski is the right rapporteur here, because with his question and his commentary, he pretty much covered everything. But I'd like to add something. It's a good idea to get geothermal energy going in Europe. It's rather obvious. Rather than looking into have we not done anything before, I'm sure there are many explanations that some people don't want to listen to. I would like to look forward and ask the Commission, having noted that there is potential, that we haven't got an overview, is the Commission doing a analysis and other studies to see what we can actually do as quickly as possible so that we can get going using geothermal, including, of course, the same question asked by Professor Krasnodevsky. Will there be a strategy for geothermal, or will we continue saying that geothermal will be part of all sorts of other plans, so it'll be a little bit unclear what is the European strategy for geothermal? So can we get a clear answer? Will we get a strategy from the Commission, yes or no, and when? Will there be a proper analysis of the consequences of that? Also, and I think it's important to say this now, but also to put it into our report from the European Parliament, I think we should agree that we should have some technical scenarios about what types of geothermal heating can be achieved where in Europe. It's not about drilling deep enough down into the Earth's core, and so that we can all get the same sort of geothermal heating. There are certain types of things that don't work everywhere. That's the sort of things that we need to know about. So could the Commission tell us if we'll get this very quickly, or is this something that we need to write very clearly into our report that this is something we'd like to have? Thank you very much, and sorry for going over my time by 25 seconds.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Weiss. On behalf of SND, the shadow, Mr. Fuchslang, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, colleagues. I think both Professor Krasnodevsky and colleague Weiss touch upon very relevant issues here. I would just like to remind you that the EU is still dependent on fossil fuels from Russia. LNG is shipped in ever greater numbers, and Russian oil is entering EU harbors through India, as Der Spiegel reported recently. So the energy market is still volatile. On top of this, the OPEC countries have decided to turn down the production of oil, and natural gas prices can be affected by the possibility of a strike in a single LNG facility, as we have seen in the recent strike in Australia. So I'm saying this to underline that we still need more renewable energy. We need our own sources, independent sources of energy in our heating system. And that is why I think that geothermal, actually Professor Krasnodevsky asked the most relevant question perhaps. We know that the potential is there, but why is there a gap, such a large gap between the potential and what is actually happening? And that is what we need to explore, and that is the development that we need to push also in this report, I would say. We have a number of priorities, and we have a shadow meeting later today. I look forward to that. But to begin with, I would like to also say that we have, fortunately, just as the Commission mentioned, adopted the Renewable Energy Directive and the Energy Efficiency Directive. And both these directives push renewables in the district heating and cooling sector. The Energy Efficiency Directive actually requires that we have a still larger degree of renewables in the district heating systems before they can be counted as energy efficient. And so we hope to push this development through in this regard as well. So I would like to ask the Commission, perhaps on top of all the relevant questions from two colleagues here, do you see a well-established practice of exploring the possibility of geothermal energy in the member states? There could be different methods, but do you think there's a best practice, and is this something we could push in this report? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Niels. On behalf of Renew, the shadow and the vice chair of our committee, Mr. Morten Pettersen.
Thank you, Chair. Now this seems to be a file and a case where we can all agree on all the benefits associated with geothermal, and I think good questions have already been put forward as to lack of speed in this, given all the benefits, the potential, the issue of security in terms of this is homegrown, homemade European energy replacing coal and biomass running 24/7, regardless of weather conditions, clean energy independence from importing fossils, and the strategic autonomy issues associated with this. All points in one direction, and this is that we have to increase speed and do more. So I think this INI report is timely, and looking very much forward to cooperating with all the good colleagues on this, because we have to pick up speed. Now, my understanding is, having spoken with some players in industry, that issues and barriers which we have to address, among others, are the access to subsurface data. And my understanding is that we have widely differing practices across member states. So some hold these data, some data are private, some is public. So we have to come up with one way to address this issue of data, making data available to industries and stakeholders in order to pick up speed. And I would very much like to for the Commission to comment further on this, on how to do this. We have an issue on permitting here as well as we do in many other issues. How to simplify permitting procedures, how to speed up permitting. We've done a lot of work on the offshore issues on this. One-stop shops might be also an issue or an idea to pick up speed in permitting. So these are issues that we want to address in the upcoming work, and we would also like to see an overall assessment of the potential of geothermal at a pan-European level, because, as mentioned, there are so many benefits. So let's make sure that we pick up on this and that we pick up speed. Looking forward to the cooperation. Thank you very much, Christian.
Thank you so much, Morten. And j'invite maintenant Madame Messieurs.
Mrs. Mesure, you have the floor. Shadow for the left. Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. As we've said, when it comes to heating, geothermal heating, it's been a lack of investment for many, many years. Why? Was it profitable, we were told. That's what the private sector said. That shows that our energy decision shouldn't be dictated by private companies. From everything you've explained, I think this will allow us to get more resilience within the EU and will produce continuous decarbonised energy and deal with some intermittence of renewable energies. As you said, this will be able to provide electricity, and to reduce our dependency on imported gas. We'll be diversifying our electrical production. We'll also be able to work against energy precarity, but for that we need regular fixed sales prices. In the report we're going to come up with, and obviously a first meeting on this issue will take place, I just wanted to raise 3 points. We need to massively invest in research, public investment, nothing to do with economic interests of the exploiters. That has to be accessible, that money for investment. We need to invest in development, including households and local authorities, and we need synergies throughout the chain to make sure that workers in the sector are abreast. So various points that are important for us that we will be trying to get into the reports that we will be discussing very soon. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. I will go now to colleagues that are not necessarily shadows, but are very interesting and would like to contribute to the debate and very sure to the report also. And I start with Mrs. Niebler, EPP.
Chairman, thank you very much. Thank you very much to colleagues and to the Commission representative for the good presentation, which was helpful. I'd just like to say, I come from an area where geothermal is important, also for decarbonisation in heating. It's essential that we do everything that we take geothermal forward in Europe. And the most important thing for me, some things have been done already, but everything that supports the speeding up permitting, planning and implementation, I think that all helps and it's important. The second important point I'd like to mention is financing. Colleagues have mentioned this. There are huge initial investments if the test bores are carried out to see if geothermal energy is available. That costs a lot of money. The investment risk is very high, and because of that, we need state subsidies, EIB programs, and also national-based programs to make progress, and also data, which was mentioned, subsurface data. That's an important area that we need to tackle at the European level. Finally, geothermal and taxonomy. I hear from those who want to get involved in geothermal that the taxonomy rules need to be adapted, that with our narrow taxonomy rules, it's difficult to get access to investment capital. So a question to the Commission, do we need to loosen up the taxonomy rules? I'd like to know if there's anything underway in the Commission there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Niebler. Mrs. Kovasi. SND.
Grazie, Presidente. Thank you very much, Chairman. Now, geothermal energy and what we're going to be producing over the next few months comes at a crucial moment. We're fully aware of how ambitious the Green Deal is. We want to be the first climate-neutral continent by 2050, and as our chairman said last week in plenary, we finally adopted the Renewables Directive. But if we want to achieve our targets, we have to be pragmatic. We have to clearly look around and try and tap into all the renewable energy sources that we haven't tapped into yet. And geothermal energy is the main one. As previous colleagues said, geothermal energy is a very valuable source of renewable energy for heating, cooling, electricity, accumulation of energy, both in the residential sector, agriculture, industry, and so on. There is so much untapped potential here, and there is no doubt about the fact that we have to harness this energy as quickly as possible. Now, as an Italian, and as a Tuscan more specifically, because maybe you don't know that in Tuscany, in Larderello, we have the first plant set up in 1911. So, thanks to new technologies, I believe that we can overhaul the past experience and improve efficiency and reduce the environmental impact. So let us move ahead on this path. Thank you.
Mr. Hoysik, Renew.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, Commission, for the presentation. Finally, after several years of this legislature, we are starting to talk about the geothermal potential seriously. It's a really big pity because geothermal has been overlooked and ignored, and the current potential and the emerging technologies give us really big hope. And it's something which can help us to address substantially the challenges we face in the heating sector, where until recently we saw subsidies given to switch to fossil gas. This year, Slovak government used modernization funds to subsidize switch from coal to fossil gas in a city where there is a nearby river and a dam, and geothermal heat pumps could be used. This is something which you really need to address. Geothermal is energy that we're working on everywhere on the planet, and we fail to use it. And another example from Slovakia is a well that was made, a geothermal source that was drilled back in the 90s from pre-accession funds, and it's still not being used. And the plans was to use gas instead of coal again in a nearby town. So much unused potential. And it's about the time that the Commission and the whole Europe takes geothermal as an equal renewable energy source compared to others. Now, I'm wondering where Commission plans to finally do this and take it on the same level as solar and wind. And how about removing a number of the obstacles and creating actually fair conditions? It's not so much about the subsidy, it's about really having a fair and equitable conditions on access to market, both on the heating and cooling as well as in the electricity creation. And how the Commission thus wants to ensure that the emerging technologies and the scale-ups, the clean tech scale-ups that we have in Europe that are looking into making sure that we can drill deeper at very good cost and therefore having geothermal pretty much anywhere, are not leaving Europe, that we keep the taxpayers' money here. And last but not least, is Commission consider, or is it willing to consider creating a European Geothermal Alliance, something built similar to the Battery Alliance, where we have uptake sector, the users of geothermal, where we have developers, scale-ups, finances, policymakers, and civil societies sitting around one table, delivering the clean energy we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Señor González Casares, por favor.
Gracias. Thank you very much. Well done to Krasnodevsky for the approval of the grid, the network, the RED even. When it comes to geothermal heating, huge potential that we're not using enough when it comes to heating, district heating. Years ago, can't remember when, we had a mission to Iceland, the S&D, and we saw the possibilities there. So, lots still to do, especially when it comes to initial costs. There is risk. Permitting, administrative permitting, we need to do things there. I think we need to further develop this energy in the EU, look at the possibilities, and when it comes to binding heating and cooling targets in the Renewable Directive that we've just approved, or this energy source, I think might help us when it comes to more urban areas. Future measures. Commission, have you looked at ground data, collecting ground data? It's normally very limited. And then finally, given the 2040 climate objectives, are we going to have any specific targets for this source of energy and renewables in, more broadly, but basically on geothermal? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Senor, okay, Mr. Danti, very short, please.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you very much. I think that this own initiative report comes at the perfect moment. I'd like to thank you for the data. Now, Mrs. Kovasi says that we come from an area that accounts for 2% of our energy, and it comes from a geothermal plant. And actually, this dates back to 1780s. That's when we started tapping into geothermal energy. And then in 1904, we actually managed to light the first bulbs thanks to the pioneers in this sector. This type of energy, as our colleague from the Greens said, is renewable. It's constant, unlike other sources of renewable energy. Unfortunately, it hasn't been developed enough over the last few years. I was a member of the Regional Council of Tuscany, and we had so many requests and applications for new geothermal plants. Why were there problems? The permit process is very complex. And secondly, there was fake news spread, and that kind of removed legitimacy from this type of power. But I think it's extremely important, and it can play a role and contribute towards decarbonizing our industry and lifestyle. That is why I think that this own initiative report is particularly important, and we need to make sure that the news is correct, that we have proper, genuine news and information on this. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kolinsky, please, you have the floor now to reply to these questions, interventions, and for a final conclusion, please.
Thank you very much for all the opinions, very well noted, and the questions on this, as already mentioned, a source of renewable energy with quite some potential. And I want to reassure you that in the Commission we definitely see it as part of the renewable solutions, renewable technologies that will help us achieve the 2030 renewables target, but also climate neutrality in 2050. Now, there were quite a few points raised related to the data, and I also mentioned it in the presentation. We do not know currently what the potential of geothermal energy is across all member states. We do not have enough granularity. Further work is necessary in order to assess it. Some member states are better than others in assessing it. There was a question where we see best practices on the mapping the potential or using the geothermal energy. Just to give you the example, you have quite a lot of use of the potential of geothermal in Sweden, in Germany, in France. In the Netherlands, it's quite often used for heating greenhouses. Italy was mentioned, etc. So across some member states, we do have good practices, but again, sometimes it's focused on some regions only. Sometimes it's not granular enough. What do we do about it? I mentioned that our Joint Research Center is running projects. We have the Energy Industry GeoLab, EIGL, which, although it doesn't have a clear map of geothermal potential yet, it has collected a number of data sets from EU-funded projects. This is far from being complete, and work continues. The Commission is also working with the EU Association of Geological Surveyors on the geological data sets, again, in order to enrich the databases that we have for geothermal. We have EU-funded projects like GeoERA. This is again about geological surveys. I would also, in this context, mention the Act on Critical Raw Materials, which requires the member states to share free of charge the results of the exploration activities, and that can also benefit this database, this atlas, if you like, of information about the potential for geothermal. In our mind, this mapping of the potential is the first step because it's difficult to prepare a strategy if we have very different views, if the data on the potential of a given technology, if we don't know actually where it can develop under what conditions. So that is one thing. There were questions related to the barriers. Apart from this, I would mention again, de-risking, so financial barriers. Once we use the potential of geothermal, or once we map the potential for geothermal, we can see more clearly where we can use the technologies, the solutions that worked in one member state in another member state, because currently it's really these are really one-off solutions and difficult to replicate. This said, I would really insist on the fact that the implementation of the Fit for 55 package will take us a long way in terms of supporting geothermal as one of the sources, renewable sources of heat and also of electricity. There are many provisions which will increase the ambition in a given sector, but which also simplify permitting. And as I mentioned, I mean, we already have in the emergency regulation, in the Council emergency regulation, there are already provisions in force which relate to large-scale heat pumps this will be structurally anchored in our legislation via the Renewable Energy Directive. So there are already solutions simplifying this. Obviously, there are other permitting provisions related to mining, for example, which are not covered there. Final point, I would like to refer to the issue that was mentioned, skills. Obviously, this is one of the bottlenecks, not only for geothermal, but also for other renewable technologies. And on skills, we have, since the beginning of this year, the large-scale partnership for onshore renewables. This has been launched and quite energetically, I would say, implemented by the stakeholders. We see that the heat pump sector is active there. I would think that this is also one of the vehicles that geothermal sector can use in order to make their voice heard in terms of the development of skills necessary. Final point, do we need to loosen taxonomy rules? Frankly, we haven't had signals so far that this is an issue for geothermal, but we are ready to explore it further. And then the President mentioned in her State of the Union speech, she announced the clean transition dialogues with different net zero industries. I would say this is a very good opportunity also for geothermal to embark in this dialogue with the Commission and to deepen this understanding of the challenges the sector faces. Thank you very much. And we are looking forward to working with you further in this area of geothermal and also in the context of the report.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for answering to the questions and the good cooperation with the committee. We will continue to work on this. We have our own initiative report and European Parliament will send a strong political and policy signal to European Commission and to the Member States that this is an important source, an important tool in order to achieve our goals. And we need to pay even more attention than until now in order to use the full potential of the geothermal energy all over across Europe. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you to ITRE Secretariat, Services of European Parliament, and the interpreters. And see you at 2:30. And please remember that in the afternoon we have 3 ministers from the Spanish government presenting the priorities of the Spanish presidency. Thank you, colleagues. See you.